My name's Aidan Thaggard, and I'm a risk analyst on the risk and resilience team here at Supply Wisdom. Today, I want to talk to you about cascading risk. We're going to take a look at a case study and draw some conclusions about how you and your business can best identify and mitigate cascading risk. The definition of cascading risk that we're working with is negative incidents and risk exposures that originate in a given domain of risk that generate negative incidents or risk exposures in other domains of risk. The case that we're looking at is Accela Technologies. For those who aren't familiar, Accela is a US-based global business process automation company that's experienced significant cascading risk over the past year or so. This began most notably for them in June of 2022 with a network security incident that impacted operational and IT systems. From there, operational challenges followed, like network outages, which were followed by staffing shortages as a strong dollar was leading to significant decreases in revenue. So financial difficulties mounted over the course of the year for Accela. This was bookmarked by various negative notices from the NASDAQ and from the US SEC. And as of today, Accela's stock price has decreased by 99.6% over the last 52 weeks. Any supplier with this level of financial difficulty is unlikely to be a reliable piece of our supply chain. And this is why we want to talk about strategies for identifying and for mitigating cascading risks like this. The first point that I want to make is how absolutely critical it is that we are monitoring the full spectrum of all risk domains and monitoring them continuously. In cases like this, obvious indicators of risk will emerge later on, especially in the financial realm. If we see a downturn in our suppliers' revenues or stock prices, it's fairly clear that some service disruptions or disruptions to service quality could follow. But by the time we can take note of these financial indicators, it's often too late to be proactive about mitigating cascading risk. If nothing else, we're subject to quarterly publishing schedules of financial data, which can put us a few months behind the curve regarding what's really going on with our suppliers. But if we're monitoring the full spectrum of risk domains, with something like Accela, we would have taken note of operational risk early on in the form of network outages and staffing shortages, and we would have noted that these had the potential to generate the financial difficulties, which would ultimately create serious service disruptions. Beyond this, the most conspicuous indicator of risk in the case of Accela was the fact that a cybersecurity incident occurred. This was the catalyst for the entire risk cascade. But simply taking note of this incident occurring would not have been enough to inform us about a risk cascade or service disruptions. It's all about how the nature of this incident relates to the controls environment in place at the supplier. In this case, it was the fact that a cybersecurity incident generated difficulties in the domain of operational risk in the form of network outages that created the actual risk cascade that would ultimately create serious service disruption. So a critical strategy for mitigating risks such as these is to leverage trigger-based assessments with our suppliers. These are dynamic assessments that take into account changes in our suppliers' environments and incidents that occur with our suppliers. In the case of Accela, this would have looked like when the cybersecurity incident took place, we could have immediately leveraged a focused assessment to understand to what extent certain controls were or were not in place to prevent operational disruptions. If we didn't catch this so early on or decide to leverage an assessment so early on, we could have leveraged a trigger-based assessment once we took note of network outages and of staffing shortages. And at this time, we could have evaluated the extent to which financial insolvency was potentially in the future for the company. At each turn in this timeline, by leveraging a trigger-based assessment, we could have obtained crucial information, which would have allowed us to make an educated decision about how to potentially alter our relationship with the supplier and limit our risk exposure. And this is why trigger-based assessments are so important. They take into account the dynamic nature of risk, the fact that risk in one domain and how it relates to other domains is what really determines the extent to which service disruptions will or will not take place. It's this in combination with a full spectrum monitoring approach, awareness of risk in all domains, that will allow us to be extremely intelligent and proactive in our management of risk. Thank you all so much for your time.